Hello, people. Today we are with Niels Pilaar, one of our guides in Mamba Pluto Academy. Welcome, Niels.
Thank you, Murat. It's a great honor to be here.
Thank you. Okay, I'd like to start with the question: who are you? Who is Niels Pilaar?
Bloody hell. It's usually my trick where I get people to talk. And I think it's the one question in life that really matters. At least it really matters to me. And I've been curious to find the answer to that question all my life, in the sense that, I once did, it was called basically a Zen training called the Quantum Leap. And you go in there and you're in silent all the time except for the dialogues, and then you sit in couples of two, and let's say you and I were having a dialogue, and the only question you ask me is, Niels, who are you? And then I start rambling because thinking of who I am. And whenever I fall silent, you say, Niels, who are you? And then after 10 minutes, you know that one, we
Yeah.
switch around and I ask you, Murat, who are you? And you answer. And that goes on for 2 times 10 minutes, and then there's a break. You go into silence again. And you do stuff where you sit and meditate. And when you have the idea that you have an answer to who you are, you go up to whoever is leading it and he says, well, I'm the shining light. And then he looks at you and says, well, continue, right? Or what are you? That's the next question. Or could be the next question. And I've seen guys sitting there for 3 days, not coming up with an answer that the facilitator would actually tolerate or accept. And I racked my brain because, I started out by telling where I come from, what my father did, what university I went to, that I was married, that I have kids, because that's also part of who I am. We have a physical presence. We've done physical stuff.
And we can start with them as they're easier.
Exactly. But it doesn't really say who we are at the end of the day. Okay. So you want to know where I come from?
Yeah, exactly. You can start with where were you born?
That's a good one. I was born in Denmark, Helsingør, because my father was a Dutch guy just after the war, and one of their friends had traveled to the US. He lived there, and the only way to transfer money to the US was through Sweden. So 3 young lads of early 20s, 22, 23, rented a car, drove up to Helsingør, which at the time was the closest way to get to Sweden. And then in the morning, the 3 of them draw straws. Who of us is going to go over and wire the money to the US? Now, my dad and his friend Tom didn't. So the third one went. They were bored, so they decided to have a walk at the beach because it's a harbor town. And lo and behold, they meet a group of young women, telephone operators at the time. Long story short, that evening, my father asked my mother to marry him. She thought she was inviting her for dinner. And she said yes. And then the rest is history. And 2 years later, I was born. So I have a dual background. That's how it feels. I've never felt 100% Dutch, and I've never felt 100% Danish. I do notice that when I cross the Danish border, I have this sense of I'm home. And all my life, I've lived in Holland. A short sting in Belgium, but basic. So that's weird to begin with. And it always, as a kid, I grew up in Holland because after 5 months, my parents moved to Holland. But for the first 4 years, my mother didn't really speak good Dutch. So she would talk to me in Danish. That's different. Fuldstændig stand til at snakke på dansk. I'm completely capable to speak Danish, right? So I learn languages by listening to them, which can be a bit troublesome because I had people in England. And then after a while, and first we had a company in Manchester, and I have a Manchester accent after 6 months. And then after we changed to Birmingham, and after 6 months, I have a Birminghamese accent. It's somehow, I can't help it, because I listen to the language. Anyways. So I think the main thing about me is that, and I only found out later, I was always the different one. I wore clothes that the Dutch kids wouldn't wear. I had a name back in the days, Niels, now is a very popular name. Back in the days when someone said Niels, it was extraordinary. That gives you a feeling of, do I belong here? I had a Danish grandmother who smoked cigars, which was perfectly normal in Denmark, but she was an attraction when she was visiting our home, and my friends would come and say, oh, let's have a look at Niels's grandmother because she's smoking cigars. That's weird. Stuff like that, and that does something to a person. At least it did something to me. It made me also very proud of my Danish roots. But this feeling, and I can understand people that have relocated, right? That they say, yeah, I do feel like a Canadian, but I have my roots. Roots is a very important thing. I found out I had a big crisis in my life back in 97. Yeah, it was 97. I didn't know what to do, so I took my entire family and my mother and the friends of my kids to Denmark. And I sat on the coast of Denmark trying to answer this life question that I had. And it came rolling in. I could never done that in Holland. Don't ask me why, Murat. I don't know why that is true. But that is a funny thing. As much as it is a funny thing, I'm in a transformation game facilitator. It's a game that I found out 32 years ago. It's also part of who I am. You know, I've been a CEO, a businessman for many, many years. And at the same time, this game fascinated me through my teaching. I'm facilitating a game in Stockholm, north of Stockholm, like 20 kilometers north of Stockholm. During the game, I go outside for a walk. And I walk into this neighborhood and I suddenly say, fuck, I've been here. My whole body says, you know this place. Weird. Totally weird. A year later, I'm in Istanbul, believe it or not, also facilitating a game. Right? I go for a lunch break, I can't remember, and it is in, is it called Otakoy? The very old part.
Yeah.
Yes, right? I walk down to the Bosporus. I'm standing there next to a couple of people and some tourists, and this eerie feeling comes again. You've been here, my pal. Not in this life. So who the fuck am I then? It was many years ago, we were in Athens, and there is a shop across the hotel that we're in, and they sell Byzantine jewelry. And I completely melt. I think it's the most beautiful jewelry in the world. Now, why? So that fascinates me. So at the given point in time, I wanted to know who I am. What's my legacy? Where do I come from, right? So a good friend of mine did a heritage test. You take some blood and they figure out your DNA, and then they say, oh, you're probably from there and there and there. And he wanted to know whether he was Nigerian. He comes from Suriname, an old Dutch colony, grew up in Holland, and he wanted to know, what's the mixture in me? He is 60% Nigerian, originally, right? So I wanted to figure out how much Dutch am I and how much Scandinavian am I, how much Danish. So I send in my blood. I get back, and I'm very disappointed. I'm only, 37% Scandinavian. Then you would say, oh, 63% Dutch. No, zero Dutch, zero. It's British, it's English, Welsh, Celtic, Scottish, God knows what. What? I have a family tree from my father's side that goes back to 1600 when my family entered Holland, and there's not a single Englishman in there. So where does that English blood come from? Again, I'm confused. Maybe my mother didn't tell me everything. You know, you get these weird ideas about what the fuck is going on here. Where am I from? Anyway, I grew up in Holland. You know, a regular thing, went to grammar school, did my university.
What did you study, can I ask?
Business administration. My father was an entrepreneur. He had his own company, you know, in concrete. And I remember, you know, I had basically my marketing business education at home, because he would come and start and says, when he started that company, basically my grandfather started the company, but he was a surgeon and made a mess out of it. So he let his son do it. And then they two got into a fight. Anyway, this is nice talk. And my father was very much about, you have to find your niche. You have to find your specialty. He was just producing ordinary bricks for roads. That wasn't, you know, you need to come up with some other stuff. So he was always into new ideas. And the best idea he had in the end was actually concrete blocks with a hole in them, which he would stick to a mat, and then you would cover them on dikes, and you would have an erosion control protection system that works phenomenally. And he had patents all over the world. So here is a local concrete factory from a small town in Holland selling its product in fucking Kyoto, in Tokyo, Japan. No one had pulled that one off. So that was my education, basically at home. Always try to find your spot. I went to a business university. At the time, they were the first ones to really be into marketing. And I still remember my marketing professor, Fred Lagotsky, saying, okay, there are 4 things important for a company, marketing-wise. The 4 Ps. And we all know price, product. No. He said, no. Positioning, 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 and positioning. And I've never forgotten that. You know, everyone can do something. What's your position? Why are you different than the rest? What makes you you? What makes Mumbo Pluto Academy Mumbo Pluto Academy? Where's the catch? What is it that attracts people? So I think that is part of who I am too, doing university, then going to the US. So I got a bachelor's in business administration. A sideline, and just asking about where do I come from. And I'm the eldest of 4 children. I have 2 sisters and my brother, and he died a couple of years ago, cancer. God has his soul. Of course, I had a father who had his own business. So I wanted to be an entrepreneur too. And then my mother would say, oh, you're great, you're fantastic. Yes, but you will never be as good as your father. Right? So what is it you want to be? The same thing. At least I want it. So I was always looking for, how can I become the chairman, the president, or whatever? So here I am. I'm 16 years old. And we had just lived in Belgium for 1.5 years. I come back to my old high school. Lo and behold, they asked me to become president of the student board. Now, to make it more attractive, my father always told his story that when he was 17, he was the president of his student board, and they were so successful in that year that the entire board was sent off the school after that year. So I don't know what they did, but they had a lot of fun. So I thought, oh, I'm being asked to be the president, Whoa. I come home and say, hey, Dad, listen, they want me to be the president of the student board, the student organization. And I was expecting this praise, this, that he would be proud of me. And he says, is that all you can do? Copy your father? I wish you luck, because I'm 26 years older. You should be doing it because you want it. It totally fucked me up. I said, okay, I'm not going to ask him. I'm not going to tell him anymore if I'm proud of something. I need to find my own way. It was a very harsh lesson. I tell you that. It was a very harsh lesson. And when I finished my university, within the time, whilst at the same time I've done everything possible next to it, being in all kind of organizations and still studying at the same time, my father said, it was well done. I said, I didn't say it this way. I think, thank you, thinking fuck you. This is on me. This is not because you supported me. This is not because you helped me. This is what I wanted. The one thing I noticed there, and it's funny because it has something to do with human design, I noticed that if I wanted something, I need to be asked. So whenever I would try to ask for a position or anything, I would fail. I wouldn't be offered. If I made myself visible, then they're going to ask me. Now, the funny thing is, I'm not a big fan of human design. My thing is numerology. But the funny thing is, I'm a projector in human design. And what's the main theme of a projector? They need to be asked. I thought, well, that's weird how that stuff works, doesn't it? After the university, I got my bachelor's in Holland, and then I wanted to finish it off in the US with a master's. At the time, we're talking 1977. Having an MBA, you were one of the few positioning, right? You were one of the few in Holland. That was the hot thing to be. So I went to the US and studied in Phoenix. Brilliant, met great friends. Then we had an exchange program in Guadalajara. So there was a time that I spoke fluent Spanish, mainly because my teacher, her first name was Pilar. My last name is Pilar. So I immediately had this connection with her. And I was the only guy in the class who could pronounce the rolling R. Americans can't, There was a Pilar. You can't say Pilar. There's no way. So fun. Absolute fun. And I thought, this is the way it goes. And I had planned to go into finance. So numbers at the time, I liked marketing, but finance, and somehow, I don't know, it worked on me. And I figured, I'm going to go for a financial position in South America. My father was in love with South America. I was in love with South America. This is why I studied in Mexico. So I figured after Phoenix, I'll go find a position in South America. Now, one thing happened before I went to the summer term in Guadalajara. My father had a heart attack when he was 40. I was 15 at the time. And he kind of discovered me at that moment. He was this businessman that was either working or having a joyride with his Porsche or his airplane. But at 40, he got a heart attack. Suddenly, he discovers his family. Suddenly, he discovers he has a son that is one head taller than he is and whom he cannot beat physically anymore. And we had a great time. We went sailing, lots of talks. That means talks with my mother meant he's talking to me and I'm listening. But I learned a lot from that. I learned a lot about all the doubts that an entrepreneur has, all the difficulties that you have, that even if you're independent, you're dependent on the banks, on money, on customers. There is always this fucking dependency. Anyway, I'm studying in the US. My mother wants me to come back to celebrate my holiday, 12th of May. So I come back for a week, but I also had a girlfriend, and we were discussing whether or not to be engaged. And we had some troubles because, to be very honest, I wasn't that monogamous whilst I was in the US, right? So she was very angry with me. So I got in a fight with her, and then my father felt he didn't get enough attention, so he says, fuck off. You go with her, and I thought we were going to have a chat, but we're not. Basically, I was 23 years old. Did I know much? Just before I was about to go, he said, "You're not leaving before we have a talk. You're not leaving whilst we have a fight." So I came home again, and we had a talk. And this talk is a turning point in my life, because he said to me, "Son, who shall determine in your life whether your life was successful or not? Who's going to know?" Because first of all, the difference between success and failure is like a razor's edge. So thin. Sometimes the ball falls to the left, sometimes it falls to the right. How would you know? The only one who possibly knows whether you've given in your life what you have, that's you. And when you die, who's going to judge you? Possibly you're the only one who knows. Did I live the life that I could have lived? Did I live all the talents and all the passions that I have? He said, just make sure that when you die, you don't regret not doing something because you were afraid of what people said, whether it would be successful. You know the whole thing. And he said, son, you were born with 8 cylinders as a race car. You could easily zoom through life on 4, but you wouldn't die fulfilled. So try to use all the 8. And that was it. 2 months later, he dies. I come back. The company was bankrupt, and the accountant says, well, Niels, you have 2 options. If you do nothing, you're bankrupt now. If you continue, you will go bankrupt. I'm 23 years old. What do you say? Let's go on. We managed for 5 years. If I look back, I still can't believe how I survived. I think it was very much thanks to my first wife who pulled me through, and the fact that we had a daughter. And after 5 years, due to many, many different circumstances, I had to declare 2 bankruptcies, and it was done. Everything was gone. And I was 20 years old, had a wife, had a kid, 30,000 guilders I owed the bank, and 2 bankruptcies behind my name. And all my friends were product managers, marketing managers, drove their first BMWs or Mercedes. I'm fucked up. And then I'm being tested for a position, and the psychologist, you always have a final talk with the psychologist. And he says, Mr. Pilaar, if I look what you've went through in these past 5 years, financial organizations, talking to the banks, talking to the tax authorities, having court cases to sort of lower the debt of your company. There are many CEOs who haven't had this experience even when they're 55. And you're only 28. Yeah, so what? Well, you need to go on a sabbatical. You need to recover. And I remember that looking at the guy and saying, what are you telling me? Are you going to pay my sabbatical for 6 months? Because I owe the bank money. I have no income. What are you talking about? So I didn't have a sabbatical. That's clear. Then the crazy thing happened that I got offered a position where there was a company. They were very successful. They existed for 5 years. And in 5 years, they had grown from, 4 million to 20 million, making a nice 2 million profit. The guy who owned the company was an elderly gentleman of 60. I'm way older than he is now. He was then. And he was looking for a successor because he felt that within the company, it's only 10 people, and his son was in the company. And he felt, yeah, but they're not capable of running the company. And somehow the headhunter saw me and says, you are the guy, I'm going to propose you. And I got the job. The minute I walk in, the management team that had built that company together with the owner said, you fucked us over. You promised us the shares in the company when you would retire, and now you're pulling in an external CEO. And they left. And with them, they took the biggest supplier. So from 20 million, the company went back to 10 million. And from 2 million profit, 1 million loss. And what the hell is this? I stayed. After 5 years, they were very profitable again. And again, I was headhunted for a company where they said, oh, we need a young managing director. I'm 40. I was 33, a bit young. And I said, how's the company doing? When I got asked for this position, I get a phone call on Wednesday morning by the same headhunter who had brought me in the previous company. He says, I have this job, this opening, and they're looking for a managing director of a subsidiary company, of a group of companies. And I've brought them 5 different candidates, and this group managing director, he kicks them all out. They're not good enough. And suddenly, while I was shaving this morning, I thought of you. So, well, why not? The unexpected. Wait a minute. You can speak to the guy this afternoon at 4 o'clock. Oh, that doesn't give me much time to prepare, does it? So I think, okay, that was in gas heaters. So the one thing I do before meeting this guy, I go to a local gas heating shop and ask the guy about what brands do you have, and I'm looking for a gas heater for my mother. Which one is it good? Well, I like this one, the DRU. Drew. Yeah, he's a great kind of. I said, but There's a Faber, different competition, I knew, next to it. Yeah, that one's good too. Yeah, I said, but there's a 250 euros price difference. So why should I buy the Drew? Well, I can't tell you really, as he said. So here I am meeting this very special group managing director, very successful in turning companies around, and I have to sell my case. So he says, oh, so are you interested in this company? He said, well, before we start with that, and I tell him this story, he said, I think you have a problem. I think you're not capable of telling people why this gas heater is worth the extra money. Your positioning is wrong. Positioning again. He looks at me, he says, okay, I understand. You've laid your finger on the sweet spot straight away. I want you. I said, well, wait a minute. How big is the company? Well, it's 130 people. I came from a company with 13. 130 people. He said, what's the turnover? 40 million. What's the profit? 2 million. That was the fucking budget. I entered the company. Lo and behold, 27 million came first because it was seasonal stuff. And 1.5 million euros lost. What the fuck? Why is this happening to me? It took me 2 years. I was the ultimate Mr. Nice Guy. This is what I had learned. You have to please everyone. You make sure that everyone's happy in the company. And then comes September 1990, and we're in this process because the whole group of companies had a turnover of, I think it was 130 million, and we made 30 million loss. They were part of a stock exchange company. So something had to happen. So we were writing business plans. And this was a great thing. The whole group was, I think, 200, 300 people or more. And we would gather every 3 months in the big eating area of the company and present our business plans according to a business guru. And my team stands there in September 1990 presenting how we would survive as a heating company. And I get completely, what do you call it? Grilled. Because everyone there's 150 people in this hall, and they could ask questions. And then there was a kind of a supervisory board, and then there was my group managing director. We were grilled. At the end, my group managing director stands there and says, no future for this company. Total lack of leadership. I don't know where this is going. So all my colleagues come up to me and says, Mark, my condolences, you're going to be fired next week. I went home and didn't know what really had happened. Because when that happened, it was public where he said that. Where I stood and he talked to me, right? I froze. I couldn't say anything back. I said, what's going on? I don't know. And I went into freeze. I wasn't myself. I got all kinds of interim managers in my company to solve something. He didn't fire me, possibly because the mother company was doing a public stock sale. So they couldn't have a company declaring that they were reorganizing. I had met my teacher because I had done a course in June saying new ways to manage. And I was fascinated by that. I was fascinated by the fact that people could self-manage themselves. And in February 91, he comes in, I think just after my son was born, and he says, how are you doing? And I said, I'm doing great. Because I had said, I want to come for a spiritual week in Czechia. And he looked at me, he says, I don't think you're doing great. I think you're doing terrible. What the hell's going on? So I told him the story. He says, you know what? You come. I don't do therapy anymore. He's a psychotherapist, but I'll make an exception for you. So before I know it, I'm in Amsterdam on this couch sitting there and I'm being analyzed. And he says, you have to tell me this. This fucker degrades you, humiliates you in front of 150 people and you say nothing. How is that possible? I don't know. I just couldn't. I froze. He says, why did you freeze? Where do you know this from? Basically, we went into a regression. And suddenly, I'm 5 years old. 4 or 5 years old. My lovely Danish mother, panicking because, again, I had cycled off, run off, I don't know what I had. And then she would say, you have to come with me to the living room. She would seat herself in my father's chair, pick up the phone, and pretend that she was calling the orphanage. Because she said, a son that doesn't listen to his mother, I can't have him. And I would break. I would ask for forgiveness in Danish, and then I would be forgiven, and we would be back in normal. So the lesson I learned, never fuck with the authority above you. Now, with my mother, that was okay because she was at the end loving me. But this was instilled in me. Never fuck with the authority above you, especially if it's an authority that you admire. And I must say, I admired the intelligence of my group managing director. He was a very, very smart guy. And then my spiritual teacher said, my therapist said, now you know where it is. I said, fuck yeah. It took me 6 months to confront him. We had a talk. I finally got the privilege of doing the reorganization that I felt I should have done straight when I came in, but I wasn't strong enough to pull that through. They brought in the HR executive from the Ultimate Holding Company, and I was being evaluated by my boss. And he's really, he's tearing me down. God knows what he was saying about me. I couldn't sell. Nothing worked. And then suddenly I feel my knees trembling. And I said, this is the moment. Fuck, this is the moment. So with shaking knees, I says, hang on, Fred. One thing, hey? Yes, you're better than I am in everything. You're a better salesman. You're a better production manager. You're better at everything. I know that. But I will not have it that you make me into a fucking criminal. I am not a criminal. Fuck off. He exploded. And I just went, that was the thing. I had broken some of the spell, not all of it, because I was still afraid of him, but some of the spell had gone. And lo and behold, 2 months later, we have again this big general meeting, and I had 2 interim managers, one for production and one for marketing, that he had parachuted into my company. And my production manager is presenting his case, and we had talked it through exactly what he was going to say. And he didn't. He changed course because he was trying to please the group managing director. And I get up. I was so angry. I get up. I think, fuck it. Fuck it. I used my length, my height. I said, move. There's 120 people in the hall, and they go, what the fuck's going on here? And I said, okay, Mr. Scharijn has again not stick to what we have agreed upon. This is what he was supposed to tell. And I tell my story. And now while I'm at it, as the managing director, I want to tell you about the course that this company is going to take and what the future of this company is going to be, because I had figured that one out. And I thought, okay, now they're really going to send me home. No, the opposite happened. This same group managing director says at the end, a phoenix risen from the ashes. This is the future. And I just thought, fuck you. And then you say, oh, you cracked it. No. We became very successful in that company. And then I wanted to take it to another level. And then my 2 colleagues didn't. They said, you cannot lead an international company. And all I wanted to do was to lead an international company. So I said, I need to go. And I get seduced to work for a wholesale company. I let myself, I know the minute when they asked me, I knew this is not where I belong. But I still went because they offered me Golden Mountains. And I went, and I remember very distinctly, after the first day, I thought, fuck, what have I done? I had my freedom. I had my company. And now I'm the second guy. And I have to wait 3 years to become the managing director. It was never his intention to make me the managing director. I went to fucking hell for 3 years. In the meantime, after my son was born, my first son, a year later, it turned out that my wife had multiple sclerosis. So that was something at the background playing too. And here I am, in a high-profile position, the second largest wholesaler in the Netherlands for sanitary and heating, and I'm not happy. So I'm trying to make the best of it. Again, Mr. Pleaser, I'm trying to make the best of it. And after 3 years, my managing director says, you know what, Niels, you're not the same person that came in here. Something has happened to you. Maybe you should talk to the psychotherapy or the psychological bureau that we used to test you. So I went there and I said, okay, what's the deal here? They tell me I have changed. And they tested me and they said, you haven't changed. So what's going on then? Well, they can't accept who you are. I beg your pardon. They said, well, basically, we feel that company is suffering from, what do you call it? Stagnation. And knowing you and what you've done, we thought, we need a fresh wind. We need an agent of change. So this is why we proposed that you would be the successor. Well, you could have told me that in the beginning. And they're not willing to accept it. Fuck, what am I going to do now? I got a wife that's saved, got 4 kids. I got a high mortgage. What am I going to do? This is when I went to Denmark. And sat on the beach and said, what am I going to do? What the hell am I going to do? And it was 14 days, and I think somewhere in the second week, I can still see it. I was looking over, it was on a sand dune cliff. We had a little house, and we could see over the Kattegat, and there was this answer coming. It says, Niels, you have to stand to yourself. You have to do your own thing. Yeah, but I don't have a job. How do I pay everything? You have to stick to yourself. So I went back and said he had prepared everything. I remember that talk because he was going to teach me, screen me into how I could perform in that company. I said, before we start, my dear friend, I'm quitting. He says, what? I said, I'm going. What do you mean? I said, I'm going. I don't belong here. I want to work with products that I own, that I know of. I want to work internationally. I want out. No, you can't do that. No. What are you doing? I said, well, I'm clearly not functioning. You're not happy with me. No, you can't go. You have a sick wife and you have a high mortgage. If ever I doubted my decision, then I knew it was the right decision. So I said, I'm going. Do we have something else? No, I don't. What do I tell the people? That I'm going. He never said anything until I finally left. And this is how magic works. So I see an ad, which is unusual for a group managing director in the south of the Netherlands. I had promised my family not to move again. We were living now in the north of the Netherlands. I showed it to my wife. She said, that's your job. That's you. So I apply. I go to the headhunter. There's 10 resumes on the table, and they all have annotations on it. I'm an old former salesman. I look at it, and I can see plus, minus, minus, plus. And then I see mine, plus, 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 plus. I said, whoa, that's right. I walked in, bang, got the job. And suddenly I'm in Walhalla. And then I meet my second wife. 2 years into the new job. This can't be happening. This can't be true. It became increasingly difficult with my first wife due to her illness. But in all fairness, I fell in love with another woman. And we were on a date in Denmark again. And I thought I was funny. So I said to her, how could it be? She's 16 years younger than I am. You know, so everything you wanted to say about midlife crisis, blah, 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 true. Fact of the matter is, I love that woman. So I tried to be funny. And I said to her, how can it be that a beautiful woman like you, 29 years old, is not a mother? Talk about chauvinistic talk, you know. But anyways, I like to provoke. You know that. She just sits in front of me, looks straight at me, puts down her knife and fork, and says, I have already decided who the father of my children is going to be. And I looked to the left, I looked to the right. She said, you can't be serious, not me. Oh, yes, she says. It's impossible. I'm married. She's very ill. I'm not going to go. Yes, she says, I know. That's what I feel. Never doubt the judgment of a woman. So it all gets in the open. I tell my wife about it. Drama. And I have this impression that I can have two women, which no one can. You know, in the end, you're not going to... Well, that's another story. I can't, at least. Then we're walking down the main shopping street in Amsterdam. And she suddenly says, you know what? I've heard our child calling. Okay, fine. Shit. I wasn't divorced yet. Not nothing. I didn't move out of house. And then comes this incredible pain and doubt and, oh, fuck, I can't do this. I shouldn't be doing this. What on earth am I going to do? And I remember driving to our German subsidiary in the morning, and I'm fucking dying in the car, not knowing what should I do. So I call my best friend, Arno, and I say, man, I'm dying here. I don't know what to do. I absolutely don't know what to do. I can't leave my first wife. I can't leave our son. What am I going to do? And then he said the magic word, and the unborn child is not allowed to be born. And that rang a bell in me. So I chose Claudia, my second wife, told that my first wife. 6 months later, Claudia was pregnant, and our son is now 23 years old. My first wife died in 2011. I took care of her, and I was the last one to speak on her funeral. People tell me you can only love one person. I say that's not true. You can love many people. There's a great saying from one of the Tantra teachers of my wife who says you can love many people, you cannot live with many people. And I agreed to that. And then basically through my second wife, that's an interesting one too. I joined her at a training that she was doing in Germany, basically because I wanted to be a whole weekend with her, right? That was my objective. Fuck it, whatever we were doing. Anyway, this turned out to be a very interesting training because it was something where they look at you and they say something about your characteristics. And everyone got analyzed. Oh, me. And her teacher, Got Wenzel, analyzes me. And, there's a lot of stuff in there that just hit home. You're in a leadership position, you're strategically well, and you have children, if not more than one. I had 4 at the time, right? Okay. And then the very last sentence, if I were you, Mr. Pilaar, Herr Pilaar, dann würde ich mich für die Pentalogie von Herrn Müller interessieren und Ihre Schwiegermutter weiß Bescheid. So, if I were you, Mr. Pilaar, I would interest myself for the numerology of Mr. Müller, pentology, and your mother-in-law knows everything about it. I thought, well, let's see. So I left it. Then 2 weeks later, I had hired a new human resource manager, very lovely woman called Joan. She comes in, and the very first thing she does is draw a pentagram and put my numbers in it, and gives a perfect description. I says, what the fuck? This is the second time this comes around. What is this? What is this? Well, it's called Pentalogie, Numerology of the Pentagram. He said, you have a little booklet? Yeah, I took the booklet. And from there on, no one was safe anymore because I would ask for the date of birth and I would start doing it. And that has grown on me. So when my time as a CEO, I was 15 years the CEO of Cora. Beautiful, wonderful colleagues, had a great, great time. Took the company from, that's an interesting, when they were hiring me, one of the supervisory board members said, Mr. Pilaar, tell me, this company hasn't made a profit in 10 years, and you still believe that you can make money with this company? Why are you not afraid? Now, you know a little bit about my background, going bankrupt and turning companies around. So I said, well, first of all, I've looked at the balance sheet. They're so incredibly wealthy, they could have another 10 years of losses and can still pay for it. That's one. And second, positioning again. I said, it's a manufacturing company, right? They manufacture products. Now, when Nike came onto the market, was there a demand for Nike? No. Puma was there, Adidas was there, Reebok was there, and a million other brands. So there was no space for Nike. Nike carved his own space by focusing on athletes. I believe in product development. Steve Jobs came with the iPhone. Everyone was laughing at him. The president of Nokia said, there's no way. Who knows Nokia? They're gone. So positioning, finding your spot is always the answer.
Niels, would you consider teaching business also in Mamba Polito Academy?
Know a bit, yes. Yes, I know a bit. A lot of my coaching is around business. The thing is, you have to combine business with spirituality. Why the hell are you doing it? What is it you want to get out of it? If it's only the money, forget about it. You know, my shareholders were wealthy. I just gave them way more money than they ever expected, and it was still not enough. Now, why? Because it has to bring something internal. So when after 15 years we had a fallout, I basically, I was more and more neglecting what they wanted because I figured I have a different opinion. I wanted to take the whole company to India. And I can imagine, because I said, this is where the sanitary market is growing. It's not growing in Europe. In Europe, it's shrinking. And you have the big names. So at the end of the day, we're going to be pushed out of the market. So we need to find a market that is initiating, which is India, or was at the time, and put all our stocks in there. And they said, yeah, but we're European. We're not going to do that. I said, well, then we're not on the same page anymore. And then I had to do my own thing. And I thought, well, this is weird. Because when I was 23, one thing I wanted to do in life was to lead an international company. And I did. I'd done that for 15 years, very successfully. So do I want to lead another company? I said, well, no, I'm never going to get the amount of freedom that I have had in this company. But I'm not dead yet. So what's next? I had an interest in Tantra already when I met my second wife. Then she pointed me out to a new school. And what I loved about that school was this idea that and then we come back full circle, that you use your life energy to get to enlightenment, whatever that may be. And I wanted to combine that with business. So I had a plan at the time that was called Penetrate the World, the relationship between business, sex, and a better world. It never really took off. So it's probably more a mind thing than something that called me. But I went into that Tantra school. That taught me a lot. I'd started doing my transformation games, which really caught on. I started doing my numerology and then the coaching. And yes, I'm on the supervisory board of some companies where I can do my old trade. But it's this new combination of working with people, which I found out in the last 5 years of being CEO, that was basically what kept me going. People would get into my office, whether it was a collaborator or an accountant or a lawyer or whatever, and even my secretaries would say, "You have an appointment with Mr. Pilaar?" Yes. Okay, when you come in, state your name and your date of birth, because he's going to ask for it anyway, right? And then we would have this weird conversation because I would look at their numbers and I would start saying stuff. And then after 2 hours, they would say, "This is the weirdest conversation I've had in my life." And I loved it. And if you ask, what are you doing now, Niels? That's basically my business, having weird conversations.
Nice. What is so attractive with this numerology of the pentagram? Where does this passion come from?
Well, first of all, because it's so bloody easy to calculate, right? So within 5 minutes, you have a chart, and it takes a couple of years to be able to read the chart. That's something else. But it gives you, also for beginners, very quickly some handles to talk to a person about. If my theory is that we're a product of our nature and our nurture. If I look at a person, and I've seen that happening to myself, I did an MBTI test once, which is a Myers-Briggs talent test, very well accepted. And this one told me that I was extrovert. So, okay, fine. But it was answering questions. Then I had a German professor come in and he says, I've developed the same test, but using symbols so that it is language independent. I did the same times, and it turned out I was highly introvert. I said, wait a minute. I can't do the same test and get two different answers. So I called him in and he started laughing. And he says, well, because when you get turned on the subject, you are very extrovert. But for the rest, you're very much introvert. Bang. So psychological tests say who you are right now, Murad, with all your fuck-ups, with all your conditioning. And we're both aware of the fact, the human child, from the moment of conception, the first 9 months in the belly of mommy, it is a unity with mother. Whatever mother experiences, the baby experiences. And it lasts on for at least 1.5 years. Only then you start to figure out that you're apart from your mother. So whatever she goes through, all the fights with her husband, all the frustrations, you have in your system. And then education starts. This is where the whole wisdom of trauma comes from. Basically saying, what you needed as a child, but you didn't get it. And we develop defense mechanisms. And they're good because they're very important whilst you grow up, because you enter in a world that you don't understand. The fact of the matter is, they may not all really support you in your nature of who you really are. If you're a born leader and you're being suppressed all the time, you're going to become a very angry little girl or boy. Now, why is it interesting? Because if I had people in the company, I wanted to know what's their potential. Now, why does the potential lie? In the way they were brought up? No, because then that you do on power, on force. You can only give as much energy as you have. However, if it's your nature, you get to the spiritual dimension. You suddenly get fed by the universe and you can do way more. And I've seen it happen in companies. If you bring people to who they are, they start walking because they want to walk, not because you push them. And then as a leader, you walk behind them. Like Gandhi said, I have to follow these people. I'm their leader. Brilliant. Best way of describing leadership. He had inspired them to do something. And inspiration is spiritual. It's not something you learn. So you open yourself for it. This is why Tantra is so important. Now, why is numerology for me important? Because it's quick and dirty, and I can tell you something about your nature. So does human design, so does astrology, and a lot of other ones. But there you need way more technicalities to do it. I love the fact that within 5 minutes, I have your chart. And I start confronting you with it. I mirror you. That's what I love. I love mirroring people. It took me great, great courage because my mother didn't want that. But it's a core feature of who I am. It's a core task I have in life to ask the right questions so that people come closer to themselves. And that's why I use my numerology. That's why I'm horny on it. That's why I love the transformation game, because it does the same thing.
What is the transformation game?
Smart cookie you are. It's a game that originated in a spiritual community called Findhorn, in the north of Scotland. Fascinating story if you read how that came into existence. And two ladies, Joy Drake and Kathy Tyler, designed a board game. It's a board game to mirror the way they lived in that community. And it starts out with a question that you have, a life question, like my relationship is not working. My work is not satisfying. I'm always short of money. I can't stand up for myself. And if you're capable, you turn that into an intention. Like my intention is to stand up for myself in no matter what the situation. And then the game is going to give you feedback through cards, but also through the players that are around it and whoever facilitates it. This is where I use my numerology again, right? And it could be cards like, I got the card in 5 consecutive games back in the 90s that said you constantly look outside yourself for sources of direction instead of following your own inner truth. The synchronicity is beyond. That's what happens in the game. The game works with inside cards that gives you strengths, setback cards that shows you where you hold back. You're set back by your jealousy. You're set back by your control. You're set back by God knows what else. I don't have it right here right now. Or the insights. You're a radiant, loving being and you're not aware of it. You can give very specific feedback without judgment, stuff like that. And then you have squares where you land on, where you have to all do the difference between intuition and free will. You can create miracles. You can get into a depression. You can give appreciation to people. And in that setting, somehow you figure out, there are different levels to life than I thought about. And it knows the same levels that we have in the numerology. It has the physical level, it has the emotional plane, it has the mental plane, and it has the spiritual plane. So life is a journey, not a guided tour. And that plays out in my numerology, it plays out in a transformation game. And in Tantra, let's be honest about it, in men's work too. That's what we're going to talk about. It's always this combination. And it's all geared to one thing. Are you certain that when you die right now, you have lived a fulfilling life for yourself, not for other people? Have you hit your call? Do you feel I've added something? Because you will be remembered by your family, your friends. Have you touched the hearts of people? They will remember you. That's how we live on. My father died 47 years ago. And he's still alive in me. My first wife died in 2011. She's still alive in me. My mother died in 2016. She's still alive in me. My brother died in 2020. He's still alive in me. And it will last for 2 or 3 generations and it's gone. That's okay. That's your soul. For me, the soul is the combination of the physical body and spirit. And it has a goal. It has an idea of why am you here? Why is Murat? What's he doing? What's his purpose? And I'd rather call it calling. What is it you cannot not do? Bliss, Joseph Campbell called it. And anyway,
I love the word enthusiasm.
do you know where it comes from?
Yeah.
Exactly.
God possesses you, right?
Yeah. If you hit, and in my numerology chart, I have the number of enthusiasm. And it means it's the high expression of my insights. Then I get excited. And that's always the thing. And lo and behold, it has sexual energy in it. And sexual energy is not just about fucking around or pornography. It's about the life energy that we have. And we're getting so frustrated over it. Instead of having it free flowing and using. Lo and behold, my hero, Napoleon Hill, the godfather of all management gurus, the famous book, Think and Grow Rich, written in 1934, published and is still available in the US, even in Culpeper, Barnes and Noble. Chapter 11, The Mystery of Sexual Transmutation. And he says there's not a single entrepreneur that does not possess a huge sexual energy. The thing is, they don't throw it away. They don't waste it. They use it for leadership, for creativity, for innovation, drive, passion. Where does the word passion come from? So that's a bit me.
I think it's a very good point to stop. Yeah, this interview with you was like a journey, and it went so naturally.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, beautiful. Do you have anything to add as a final word?
Come to Mumbo Pluto Academy. Yes, yes. Why do I love what you guys are doing? Because it's positioning. You're very clear about it. You can reach everyone around the world, but it has to be live. That's your thing. And that's your positioning, live. And then it depends on finding the right people, the right presenters, the right coaches, guides, and the right people to reach. And that's going to take a while. I've always been in the business of building stuff up. I'm not good at maintaining, Oh, the one thing I learned, I forgot to say that. Why was I always starting in companies that were near bankruptcy? Because even when in the last company, I found out that when I was in, we were on the special department of the banks. The reason why, the one failure I made was this wholesale company. They were very successful. They were churning out profits like you would not believe. People that are profitable, that are successful, are not willing to change. People that are desperate, people that are on the verge of dying, people that are on the verge of going bankrupt, they will do anything to move. So it takes, this is another concept of getting out of your comfort zone, getting to the growing edge. Where does it grow? It's on the edge where it's dangerous. And that's what you want to do with a group of people. If I wouldn't have had my therapist at the time and the men's groups afterwards, I would not have realized what I realized. It's totally clear to me. I couldn't have done it on my own. This is the one thing I learned as a child. You have to do it alone. And that is something I had to unlearn. I have to ask for support. I have to ask for help. I have to ask for information. I have to show myself and say, hang on, I can't handle this. I don't know how to deal with this. Be vulnerable in a safe container. We could talk about this for another hour. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. This can go forever. I think we are going to have more talks like this.
We'll see. We'll
We
see.
talked about enthusiasm and about Mambo Pluto. I'm going to say
Yeah.
enthusiasm and calling. These talks, these interviews, free events are satisfying me a lot. That even this is enough for me. Yeah, I'm already fulfilling
Yeah.
this calling. I'm
Yeah.
already
Yeah. Yeah.
following this calling.
Yeah.
I don't need to be successful or anything.
No, because it gives you this inner happiness,
Exactly.
which, by the way, is the energy of today. Sum of 8 and 8 and 2 and 0 and 2 and 5 is 25, and that gives 7. So it's also the day of the worldly king. It's about leadership today.
Leadership. Okay. Wow.
Out of inner happiness. Leadership out of inner happiness. Not because of strength. I think it's one of the most beautiful ways of being a king. Because you're just the happy Buddha. Because you know you're doing your thing. And then the universe will provide
Yeah.
somehow.
Beautiful. Thank you very much for your time, for your energy, and
Thank you for giving me the opportunity.
I'm really looking forward to seeing your events in Mambo Pluto.
Me too.
Thank you.
Thank you.